and welcome to another episode of Keys to Success for Music Majors. My name is Charley Roush, and I am a librarian at UTRGV. I focus a lot on music.
And my name's Katrina Roush. I'm a professor of music theory at UTRGV. We have a special guest today with us is Dr. Anthony Marasco, and he is a professor of music technology at UTRGV. We're going to be asking him some questions today about his own background and journey into music technology, and also the types of offerings that we have here at UTRGV for music technology for students. And if you're not a UTRGV student, you may have some of these types of courses at your school, and it's a good thing to inquire about them if you're interested. Welcome, Dr. Marasco. Thank you for being with us today.
Hey, y'all. Thanks for having me. Great to see you.
So like I said, you are a professor of music technology. Can you tell us how long have you been at UTRGV and kind of what journey brought you here, and what is your kind of background in music technology before you came here?
Yeah, sure. So this is my second year at UTRGV. I started in the fall 2020, which was kind of an odd year to start, of course, because it wasn't the beginning of the it wasn't the beginning of the pandemic, but it was like for many people, their second semester taking classes in what the reality of the pandemic world kind of was. So it was an interesting place to start in coming to a brand new state, a brand new region of the country, and not being able to be in class, in physically, I should say, with people. So, it's an interesting setup here in the second year. I feel like I'm doing a lot of things or experiencing a lot of things for the first time again. Although I do have some of those connections with students who I taught last semester who are in my courses. So that's fun. So it is kind of an interesting little middle ground between that. Yeah, you had asked me about my background and coming to here. I guess I could give a couple things. So I finished my PhD at Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge in the summer of 2020, and was very fortunate to be interviewed for this position in February of 2020 before the entire world changed, and was very fortunate to get a job right out of my PhD, which is not very, it's not very common. And I did not ever think that was going to happen to me. I think just statistically, I considered that it would just not be a reality, but it was. So I'm very fortunate to do that. Before that, I had did my master's degree almost 10 or so years prior to this at Towson University in Maryland, right outside of Baltimore. And before that, I did my undergraduate at Lebanon Valley College, which is in a small rural town in Pennsylvania called Annville, but it's really close to Hershey, Pennsylvania, if you can kind of put that on the map. Before that, I'm originally from a small town called Clark Summit, Pennsylvania, right outside of Scranton. Is the biggest city, which is a real city. A lot of people don't think it's an actual city because it's in the TV show The Office, but it is real. And people are from there, like myself. Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, just a few details about the types of things you work with, other than in your teaching. How do you use music technology in your job? And then sort of a follow-up to that, if you'd be interested, share one or two interesting projects you're currently involved in.
Sure. So, when I first got started with music technology, it was kind of almost kind of a happy accident in the extent that I went to college, like a lot of our students here do, to do acoustic music. And I was really, really obsessed at the time with orchestral classical music. I was just kind of discovering all the big composers like Bach and Tchaikovsky. I was a trumpet player, a conductor. I was in our marching band for a long time. And I really kind of resisted any music that had electronics in it, or at least resisted kind of the standout ones, like people like Alvin Lucier or Cage and things like that. And when I had a friend of mine, Brian Decker, who was going to Wesleyan University at the time, and he was studying with Alvin Lucier, actually, who was teaching there. And he was telling me about all of his works, like his pieces where he's using his brain waves to vibrationally activate percussion instruments around the room. And that sort of stuff really drove me insane. Like, I thought that was not real music. I thought, why would you use robotic things or motors or synthesizers to make music when you could make it with human beings and acoustically? And it was actually finding out kind of that I found music that I liked that did those things at first. Like, I was listening to a lot of classic rock at the time, and the music of The Who, which Pete Townsend at the time used all these very elaborate, for the era, synthesizers to make this very kind of expressive rock music with electronics that kind of worked my way into appreciating the things like Lucier and Barrio and Stockhausen and all the things of the time that I thought were really interesting. So with that in mind, to go back to your question of how do I use music technology, I think that there are a couple things that even all of us watching today can pinpoint where technology has made like a, like flag planted on our lives, right? Like for instance, we're all Zooming a lot today and kind of telecommunicating and oftentimes using microphones, right? And using devices to stream better sounding audio across the planet. It tends to be more commonplace than you might think. So I use a ton of that stuff daily when teaching classes or teaching lessons and things like that. For me, though, I'm also doing a ton of performance and composition with music technology. So I use things that run the gamut from a physical synthesizer, which is not much different from the stuff that the Who and other rock bands of the 70s were using, all the way to virtual models of those synthesizers that run on a phone or on an iPad or on your computer. On top of that, I do a lot of development with software for networked performance, which means that I can perform with somebody in another country, in another state, and with very low gaps in time synchronization that we call latency, we can actually send data to each other to manipulate our physical instruments or our virtual instruments through the internet.
Oh, wow.
So yeah. So we develop a software called Collab Hub, which is designed to allow people to build instruments that can communicate with one another. So while you're streaming audio and video through something like Zoom, you can kind of virtually emulate the act of like reaching your hand across the planet to kind of say, oh, I want your volume to go up, or I want the delay speed on your pedal that you're playing to go down a little bit and then up. And you can do that from your own device, from your own laptop screen.
Oh, wow. So
that's really cool.
That's almost like an interactive type of like improving maybe a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah. So we actually, my co-collaborators with this project, Dr. Nick Wong at University of Wisconsin-Whitewater and Dr. Eric Sheffield at Miami University in Ohio. We actually started using this system ourselves with two other performing partners, Dr. Anna Weisling and Dr. Jeff Harriet. And the five of us designed a piece where we do that very same thing. We built a score where we all kind of drew pictures to simulate actions or emotions or kind of events. And then we built a software where through Collab Hub, we can have a timer going that shuffles our score for us. So we each get like a different card displayed. Wow. And we're all performing based on our own little instructions, but we're also manipulating each other's performance through Collab Hub. So Anna is our visual artist, and she has these really interesting sculptures that she's put under a camera and running through a graphics processor. And we can actually change the color of the lighting that's being shown onto these sculptures. And I can do that from here. Other people can do that from Ohio, from Wisconsin. And we've done pieces where we've opened that up to the audience. So like you mentioned earlier, Charlie, we can actually have the audience participate on their phones and they can change the way that our music sounds.
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
Yeah, awesome. I love that collaboration stuff. And especially with artists that aren't other musicians too. I think we don't do a lot of that. As musicians, we tend to think, oh, if we're collaborating, it's like we're in an ensemble or something. But there is stuff that you can do with other like visual and physical arts that is really cool.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the ability to communicate with one another is easy in some regards. Like hopping on Zoom is it's not the easiest thing in the world, but it is fairly easy because the company has designed it to make it easy. And so we as the software developers have strived to do that too, to say, yes, it's not going to be the easiest thing because you still have to build something like in a programming language or in a graphical manipulation language. But if you know how to do that, if you're an artist who knows how to do stuff with video or how to do stuff with virtual audio effects and designing your own software, then we can help you with that extra layer of how do you connect those things. And we can make that as easy as possible for you. And yeah, we've had a lot of success with leading workshops with people coming and saying, oh, well, how do I add this ability to my software so I can collaborate with people in a number of different facets around the world.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So this question is going to take you back to your teaching a little bit, but
Ooh,
um,
okay.
just curious about the courses that students can take in music technology. So what are some different courses that you offer at UTRGV, and what kinds of things do students learn in them? Like if a student doesn't feel like being an electronic music composer, can they still get something out of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when you use like the term like music technology, it's a bit broader than some of the other music categories you can study at
Okay.
UTRGV, just
Yeah.
by name alone, right? So if you're going for flute performance, yes, there's tons of different eras of music. There's tons of different styles of genres that you can perform being a flute performance major. But the topic itself kind of clarifies what you're going to be doing.
Right.
Music technology, like you brought up, Dr. Roush, is really confusing at first because it's very broad, and that's kind of by purpose. Because there's so many fields where you can get a job or you can focus your research or your practice within that big bubble of music technology. We here at UTRGV, when designing this program, are doing our best to keep it somewhat focused, yet also flexible, so that if you have interests that aren't just within one little box of the music technology world, you can experience other things and kind of see how that modifies your whole worldview. So to guide into some of the examples of the classes, we break our program down into three sort of pathways. One of them is recording techniques and audio engineering. So the closest analog to this would be what a lot of people connect to music technology in their minds, which is running a recording studio, being able to set up microphones and record live concerts like the ones that we perform in here at UTRGV or see our colleagues perform in. Being able to edit that audio, being able to produce a complete live recording back to an album or CD. And also being able to run sound at live events, which as we're getting back out there in person, is a field that is still, yeah, exactly, which is still around and needs people who have the ability to say, well, I've got a string quartet on stage and I need to be able to mic them so that everybody in the concert hall can hear them. But then I also have to go and move the mics in a way that I can mic this speaker who's at a podium. Or running big events that are going to have a lot of different instrumental kinds of connections and audio balancing you have to worry about. In addition to that, the other pathways that are maybe less well known go into categories like real-time computer music, which is kind of an odd term because today any kind of music making with a computer, or well, most of them, are considered real time. That term comes from the era where you used to have computers have to like render sounds and change sounds over a long period of time, kind of like you would render for hours like a really high quality 4K video or something. Today, however, our computers, whether it's our phones or our laptops, can do things like generate sound on their own. They can take sound from the real world and manipulate it through different effects and just like distortions and delays, pitch shifting, and spit it right back out to our listeners instantaneously. And so the real-time computer music pathway focuses on being able to treat a computer like an instrument that you sit down at, you play music into it. Like say, if you're a pianist or a violinist, you can send your sound directly into the computer and have it come out very differently. Or working with tools like Ableton Live or FL Studio, which a lot of my students really, really love, where you can take little snippets of recorded music, play them back, loop them, play them backwards, add live performance and pre-recorded performances together to make a live performance musically. All of that stuff is stuff that I'm very interested in because for me, a computer became like the perfect performance instrument, where as a growing up playing trumpet and things like that, I always found limitations to those instruments that kept me from being this kind of composer performer hybrid I always wanted to be. But a computer and the real-time computer music drive behind that is what you could do in that pathway here with us. And the final one kind of combines elements of both of those worlds, and that's sound design and film scoring. So this again is one that people probably have an idea of what you do with this degree in your head already, but you can combine skills like composing music, at a piano, and then bringing it into the computer to create what we call MIDI sequences that you then layer professional sounding samples of violins and flutes onto to create a film score. Or what I really like to push for our students to explore is alternate medias, because while film scoring is still popular and very big, there's so many other mediums out there that are really hungry for composers, such as video games, VR experiences, web series, things that blend both worlds, right? Particularly things that are like web-based, where you can walk around on your phone and have audio coming directly from the web browser wherever you are.
Right.
So yeah, those types of experiences, we're hoping to have courses that focus on, how do you write music for media? How do you set a scene with music? And how do you do that, whether it's this interactive game you're playing by taking your phone around campus to do a sonic scavenger hunt, or writing for the next big action film or like Marvel movie and stuff that you see.
Okay.
Oh, it's really cool and fun.
You've kind of gotten to some of this already, but I guess maybe just like identifying the career aspect of things for a second.
Sure.
How can studying music technology enhance careers in music? Because when I went to school, they're like, you can be a band director or you can be a performer. And it's really hard to make a living as a performer. So you probably are going to become a band director. But I've found throughout my whole career that there are so many other ways you can use your studies in music to become a professional in a lot of different capacities. So talking about electronic music, what options become available with a background or knowledge of electronic music?
Yeah, again, these are great questions. I'd say to start actually with the two you mentioned, like the more like traditional degrees that we consider music majors going into, right? Performers or K through 12 educators, right? If that is what you're doing here at UTRGV or any school you're at when you're watching here from across the world, I think music technology as a focus or like a side focus is still really important. If you consider all the things that you have available on your plate as a performer, adding the ability to work music technology into that just gives you more options on that same plate. So I think about the fact that as a composer, I would see performers who would kind of put out like a call for works for, let's say voice, piano, and electronics. And oftentimes you had a mix of performers who were doing that because they were looking to, get a fresh new take on music or new musical works on their repertoire list. But the challenge then becomes, and particularly in today's day and age where we're very separated physically, if the performer doesn't really have even a cursory background in music technology, then the challenges of setting up a microphone, the performer or the composer, I should say, has given me this software that's supposed to play sound out of 4 speakers. Well, how do I hook up 4 speakers? What do I need to do this? That can be really tough to kind of get both people on the same page. So if, as a performer, you are interested in performing things that come from the classical repertoire, the pop world music genre, and the electronic genre, I think having a background in music tech, even just knowing some of the fundamentals that we teach in like our technology and music fundamentals class here at UTRGV, will just arm you to be able to say, oh, that piece needs a mic and I have to run sound into my computer and process it through this software. Okay, I've got some of those basics down.
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
Yeah, for the band director thing in particular, marching band is really big, right? And I think back to the fact that when I was in high school, our electronic setup for marching band was one large speaker on one stand and kind of like the Britney Spears or Peter Gabriel mic, like around the ear. And our band director yelling through it or putting a Dr. Beat up to that microphone and holding it and just blasting that tempo across the football field. So, there are ways that you can enhance that experience by maybe learning how to build a software that switches through different tempi and different beat patterns on its own. So while that's running in the background, you've got that tool that you've made putting out the meter changes for your band, and you can actually be on the field kind of looking things over. For orchestral teachers and things like that. There's ways to make audition videos for your students, to be able to make practice videos and audio lessons for them to study. That a tech degree could really help you learn how to do that stuff. And outside of the education realm, because I know we're talking about that here at first, all of those pathways that I mentioned earlier, I think have tons of different degrees, or sorry, well, degrees that you can continue to study in, but also career paths you can follow too. One thing that I hear a lot from my students right now who are coming into the program is that they, well, I'll ask them where they heard of music tech before or why they're interested in it. And they'll mention a lot of kind of like bedroom artists who are like making music at home in their small room studios and able to produce these really elaborate tracks, right? That sound really good and just are interesting to listen to. And so becoming a freelance artist becomes a bit easier if you have a music technology background, because you suddenly don't need a band of 15 people to make music. You can use virtual instruments to do so. You can still create music on your own if you fully have a grasp of some of the software like FL Studio or Ableton, or even digital audio workstations that just do more strict recording like Logic or Reaper. And you can have your creative vision come through without the need of an expensive recording studio or things like that. So I think the balance between like freelance work and being able to make a career in a lot of these different areas, it just hopefully will help people see that you can be very creative with how you fit that role of, I'm a composer, I'm a performer, how do I make it work for me?
Sure. And I know that there's a lot of other trends in the field of music right now. You know, music business might need to become a thing people focus more on, or or just running your own operation. And this sounds like such a vital piece to maybe building a trajectory along those lines with what's possible these days.
Yeah, I love that idea, because for me, I'm somebody who develops software as well as uses software. I build music hardware instruments as well as use them. And in that realm, I've seen a lot of instances where you have people who only fit in one of those categories, right? Particularly in the I use X, but I don't know how to build X.
Right.
And that leaves this other category of, well, I can build this thing, or I can design software, and I can find a way to get it out to the world for all those people in this other category who want to use it and make music with it, but don't know how to, or don't, maybe frankly don't want to build it on their own.
Right.
So even things like, you know, being able to say, I can make a software tool that does this particular audio function, and I can sell it for $10, right? And if hundreds of thousands of people buy it, then now that becomes more of a sustainable business model than not. You know, so again, it's not something that's always a clear-cut path sometimes with music technology, but I guess to wrap up, I'd say that if you have a clear-cut path, like a performance degree, or you want to be a music historian or a teacher, you can easily add music tech into your continuous workflow to enhance how you do it. And if you're somebody who's not quite sure where they want to be career-wise, you can kind of build some unique combinations of traditional things together using tech as the glue.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're gonna wrap up by just asking you a question that we ask everyone we interview.
Sure.
What is something that you enjoy doing in your spare time, if you have any spare time?
Yeah, there's not a lot of spare time that I have.
Yeah, that maybe isn't related to music, just something that you enjoy doing.
Oh boy, that's a good question. It's funny because I think my wife would be the person to say, like, you have things that you really like to do, but depending on how much time you have to do them, they kind of drift in and out. So like, for instance, the first thing that popped into my head is I would say like, oh, I do like playing video games, but I'm not somebody who can like chip away at a video game for a little bit every week. I usually kind of have to wait until it's like, hey, I've got a couple weeks where I actually don't have to do a lot of stuff. Let me just plow through this video game obsessively for like a day or two and get it done and be like, oh, what a cool experience. And now I'll never maybe touch a video game for a while. Like my poor Switch has been sitting dormant since like summer of this
Oh,
year when I kind of lost time to play Animal Crossing anymore.
Funny.
So the poor island is probably just covered in weeds and things like
yeah.
that. Yeah. I mean, aside from that, like I said, I love going on cool adventures with my wife. We have been kind of exploring the RGV now that it's safer to get out and do so. I love traveling, which is something that's coming back a little bit now, but it's not as easy to do, but I'm looking forward to doing more of that. And yeah, playing with my dog, my cute dog Simon, who I really love. And when I can do that, and when we can do that every night, there's always it's kind of a good wind down to the end of the day when he's like coming into the room and being like, "Hey, don't forget, we got to play. It's on the schedule." And it's like, you're right, it is. I've got to make, we can make time for that. And it's a good signal to the end of the day is, coming around and it's time to just chill for a bit.
Yeah,
Sure,
that's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I think we'll probably wrap up here. We have some contact info we're going to share.
Yeah, so we'll share Dr. Marasco's contact info. So if you have any questions about the music technology program or anything that he's been saying today, you can definitely just email him here, and he can give you more information. We do have a couple of minors you can get. If you're a music major, you can also get a music technology minor along with your major. Or if you're not a music major, you can get a music technology minor to enhance whatever else it is that you're doing. So please feel free to contact him here. I know that he would love to hear from you, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and then our contact information is here. If you have any other general questions about music or library research, or if you have anything to add about your own experiences in music technology, please feel free to leave a comment under the video or email us at UTRGVKeysToSuccess@gmail.com.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being a wonderful audience as always. And thank you to Dr. Marasco for joining us today. This has been a fascinating discussion. I think it's been really helpful. And it's really exciting to hear all the things you can learn in this wide field of study and how that can be very useful to many different paths folks might be taking.
Right. That's what I think is the most exciting about it. That just it can really enhance whatever else it is that you're doing. So,
well, we will be signing off. Take care, everyone. Have a good week. Have a good rest of the semester, midterms and beyond. We're gonna make this. We're doing great.
Yeah.
And please do reach out to us if you have any questions or want to discuss anything. Thank you, everyone, and have a great week.
Have a great day.